Hello there. The EU Commission is increasing the pressure on financial firms to relocate their clearing business to the EU. And critics say the reform doesn't go far enough. For the first time, the EU Commission will oblige financial firms to clear some of their derivatives transactions with clearing houses in the EU. The requirement applies to EU companies above a certain trading volume and for certain asset classes that are classified as systemic by the securities regulator ESMA. Finance Commissioner Merrick McGuinness will announce the new clearing strategy on December 7th when she presents her reform proposal to the EU market infrastructure regulation. In doing so, she's increasing the pressure on companies after all appeals to companies to relocate their business to the EU and that had died down in recent years. The EU wants to reduce its dependence on the financial center London. For this reason, companies are to be obliged for the first time to settle part of their derivatives transactions in euros with clearing houses in the EU. This emerges from the draft of the revised EU regulation on market infrastructure, which was available to the German newspaper Handelsblatt already. According to the 84-page document, the reform aims to build up clearing capacity in the EU and thus increase liquidity in European clearing houses. The aim is to reduce the risks to financial stability that arise from over-reliance on clearing houses in third countries. The EMIR regulation was passed after the 2009 financial crisis to reduce the risks involved in derivatives trading. Since then, central clearing houses have had to process every transaction as intermediaries between buyers and sellers. In doing so, they assume the default risk of the business and increase transparency in the market. With the reform, the Commission is reacting to the changed situation after Brexit. The majority of euro clearing continues to be handled by the London market leader LCH and thus outside Brussels' sphere of influence. EU Finance Commissioner Merrick McGuinness fears that she will not have access to systemically important institutions in the event of a crisis. According to the draft, in future, all market participants will have to keep an active account for certain systemic products with a clearing house in the EU. These include interest rate derivatives in euros and zloty, as well as credit default swaps, CDS, and futures in euros. And according to the EU Commission, around 60% of European clearing users currently have an account for interest rate derivatives with an EU clearing house. Around 85% have one for CDS transactions. ESMA, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is to develop details of the accounts. The agency will also be given new powers to oversee clearing houses to manage the additional risks posed by moving business out of London. European banks are obliged to inform their customers that they can also process certain contracts with an EU provider. Likewise, all clearing activities in third countries must be reported to the supervisory authority. The requirements for clearing providers, on the other hand, are to be reduced. According to the draft, the approval procedures for new products are unnecessarily long and tedious. This makes it difficult for companies to attract new business from abroad. Therefore, in future, they should be allowed to offer certain products without prior authorization. The draft says that the simplification of the processes would reduce costs. Overall, clearing would become more efficient. However, many companies dispute this. They argue that the London location offers the greatest liquidity and therefore the lowest costs. Market fragmentation across Europe, on the other hand, would increase costs for everyone. Yeah, but still, it's not in the EU anymore. For other critics, the reform does not go far enough. It's questionable whether the new measures alone are sufficient to break London's supremacy in euro clearing, said Christian Democrat MEP Markus Ferber. When presenting its proposal next week, the Commission must send an unmistakable signal to the market that 2025 will definitely end euro clearing in London. Until then, the exception that allows EU companies to do business in London will still apply. and I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.